I don't know if you would consider yourself an evangelist. Most of us probably would not consider ourselves an evangelist, or what some authors would describe as a big E evangelist. That means we wouldn't probably find ourselves on a street corner with a soapbox and a megaphone yelling at people as they walked by, telling them how much they need Jesus. Nor would we probably find ourselves in the front of thousands and thousands of people sharing the good news of Jesus. Now, that's okay. None of us need to be those people. But I remember this last winter when we took our sons to Toronto to watch a basketball game. We were walking down the streets of Toronto, and we could hear somebody in the distance yelling at people. And I thought, I don't know what's going on down here, so just be ready, boys. You never know what you're going to get into in the downtown core of Toronto. And as we got closer, we could hear him speaking about Jesus. And as we got closer, we could hear him. And all of a sudden, we can see people going out of their way to bypass him, to go over to the other side of the street and walk around him. Because basically, the gentleman, I'm sure he meant well, but he was pretty much condemning us all to hell. And as you walk by, that was the message that he was saying, that he was speaking and yelling at. And I thought, maybe that's not the best way to get people to follow Jesus, is just condemning everybody to hell. Well, this morning we're going to talk a little bit about evangelism and offer some steps towards how do we do this and how do we do it well. Maybe you're like me, and I grew up with the idea that there was a special technique, a way to win people to Christ. And often this has to do with something we call the Romans Road, or we scare people to faith, or we make sure that if we have memorized some mechanics and verses, that in 10 minutes, I'm going to have them praying the prayer and converted. That was my upbringing, and I remember going to Seattle as a youth, and we were trained in this approach of evangelism, and then they divided us up with strangers, as if, walking the streets of Seattle wasn't bad enough, but then they partnered us with other people we didn't know and sent us out for the afternoon and said, now go and see how many people you can win to Jesus. It was terrifying for somebody that had never left the town of Twin Falls, Idaho, never been to a big city, really didn't like sharing, or not really didn't like being out there. Right? It was terrifying enough, and then you were asked to go and use all this technique with people that you also didn't know. I grew up in that era. Some of you grew up in the era of Billy Graham, where he would win thousands and thousands of people to Christ. And none of us are Billy Graham, right? We do not have his gift. We do not have the way that he spoke. He was biblically solid. He was moral and ethically sound. He was committed to his trade and his craft of winning people to Christ. And that was Billy Graham. That was who he was. That was the way God wired him. And he did great things. And if it was just that we needed more Billy Grahams, I think God would provide them. But maybe there's another way to help win people to Christ, or to help be a witness for Christ. We're not Billy Graham. And I don't think many of us would like to stand on a street corner in downtown Penticton and yell at people. And I don't think that would be a great way to go about things. And it's probably not even that way about going door to door anymore. In my neighborhood, we have people that come door to door almost every day, selling something. Solar panels, pest control, scripture, you name it, they come. And the last thing I want to do is open the door and talk to somebody. I just want to ignore them. But often I'll open the door and see what they're selling, and it might be candy bars, and it might be solar panels, and it might be the gospel, and it might be who knows what. But often, all I'm thinking about is the thing that I was doing seconds before. And how fast can I get them off my porch and back to whatever I was doing? And so maybe we need to come up with a better plan, a better way to be a witness for Jesus. Now, certainly there are stories in the Bible where people preached on the street corner and people came to faith. I think of Peter at Pentecost in the streets of Jerusalem, where thousands of people came to faith. But by and large, the disciples and Jesus did not stand on street corners and preach a sermon. There was other ways, there's other approaches, and we need to reimagine what that looks like for our day and age. So what is evangelism, or what is being a witness for Christ all about? Wycliffe College says that this is their definition for evangelism. It's helping people take steps towards becoming a fully committed disciple of Jesus. Then that might seem a bit vague for us. Helping people take steps does not sound like a commitment to faith, a decision or a prayer, or anything else. We are there to help people take another step or many steps along the way to faith. So as we look at this series and think about what does it mean to be a witness for Jesus today, we need to come up with, or we need to be foundationally solid in our beliefs and what we believe and how that impacts how we share our faith. We come to 2 Corinthians this morning, and the words of Paul help us kind of lay the foundation of being a witness for Jesus. Let me read 2 Corinthians chapter 5, 17 and on. Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. The old has gone, the new has come. All this is from God, who reconciled us to himself through Christ and gave us a ministry of reconciliation. That God was reconciling the world to himself in Christ, not counting men's sin against them. And he has committed to us the message of reconciliation. Therefore, we are Christ's ambassadors, and through God, we're making his appeal through us. We implore you, on Christ's behalf, to be reconciled to God. I was thinking about these words that Paul wrote and how, yes, he's writing to believers about their faith, about being new creations. But if we get past that section and get into the way God is working in our world already, we believe that God is already at work in our world. All parts of our world. Every corner, every aspect, everything. Without us being there, God is already at work. The Spirit of God is already at work. And if we believe that God is already at work without us being there, then when we show up, we are his witness. We are his ambassador. We are his helper, or as I'll mention later, we are guests in a place. God is already at work, and he invites us to be a part of his work as his ambassadors, to help as we see the Spirit of God move in our world today. So this belief, this understanding should spur us on to how we do evangelism or how we do witnessing in our world. David Fitch, and we probably are, most of us are familiar with David Fitch. He is a Canadian, but he is a professor at a seminary in Chicago, and we've done a couple of studies with his books. He wrote this little book called The Presence-Based Witness. So it's really kind of thinking through what does it mean to be a witness for Jesus today? How do we do evangelism without yelling at people on a street corner or trying to attract thousands in a stadium. Because neither of those we're going to do. I'm not going to do that. Are you going to do that? No. Okay. So we need to come up with a better way. A way that works for each and every one of us, because I believe that we are all witnesses for Jesus. We want people to come to faith. And how do we do that? And what do we believe about God already at work in our world that will help us move us in those steps? So if we believe that God is already at work in our world, He's at work in our homes, where we work, where we go to school, where we shop, all those places where we eat, God is already at work. The Spirit of God is already moving in people's lives that we don't even know about. 21% of Canadians have some kind of private faith, meaning they don't necessarily go to church or subscribe to a text like the Bible, but 21% of Canadians have some kind of private faith. Another 42% have an uncertain faith. It means they have lots of questions, they don't have a whole lot of answers, and they are searching. That's over 60% of Canadians. Millions of people that are searching, wondering, asking questions. And I believe God calls us to be present with those people. Not necessarily to win them over, to get them to pray a prayer, but to journey with them as they ask questions and build into their life. Since we're not big E evangelists, we need to be present with people. We need to be ready to share our faith. We need to be praying that God will show us a place or places to show up. When we read in Luke 10, Jesus sends out the 72 and he tells them all kinds of instructions to go and to do. He says, don't take anything with you. No money, no food, not even sandals. Don't take your shoes with you. Somebody will provide them for you. Go to a house and pray a blessing of peace on that house. If it's received, stay there and be present there. Whatever's put in front of you, eat it and drink it and be there. Don't go from house to house. Just be present. And he sends them out 2 by 2, and they come back with amazing stories of how God worked in people's lives. Now, maybe we wear shoes, and maybe we take a little bit of money, but we go places. Think about all the places you went this week. Maybe you went to the grocery store, a restaurant, the barbershop, wherever. Whatever else you did this week. I went running down the channel. I ran into all kinds of people and was not present. I was just focused on survival. But when you go walking down Skaha Lake or Okanagan Lake, you run into all kinds of people. And how am I being present in those moments? When you sit at a coffee shop, how are you being present with the people that work there, serve you, the regulars that come and go? How are we being present in the moments of our lives? Naaman had a servant. Naaman was a leader of an army in the Old Testament, and he was a great leader, but he had leprosy. And he refused to get it treated because he believed there was no treatment. And the servant girl that served his wife said, you need to go see the prophet in Israel, and he will heal you. A servant girl that had no education, spoke out of turn, had no reputation, shouldn't have even said anything to Nahum, and she says, I believe that you can be healed. And he listens to her, and he goes to the prophet in Israel, and he is healed. Sometimes we need to be that person that speaks hope into someone's life. Go and be healed. Go and find help. Or how can I help you in this situation? If we truly believe that God is already at work in people's lives out there, he's inviting us to participate in that and to be present. One of the hardest things that I had to wrap my head around a few years ago was asking the question, do I know anybody that isn't a follower of Jesus? Do I know anybody in my life, in the circles that I run, that doesn't know Jesus? And for the most part, I had to say, no, I don't. I don't run in those circles. I don't know anybody. But how am I going to be a witness to Jesus if I don't know anybody and I'm not willing to put myself out there? And so we started to find ways to get involved in things beyond the life of the church. If I want to be witness to somebody out there, if I want to show Jesus to somebody, then where am I going? What am I doing? So we joined a volleyball league. And we met all kinds of people that don't know anything about following Jesus. They have a lot of assumptions about what it looks like. And it was nice to just be there and say, well, that's not necessarily true. And how can I just be present and get to know those people for years? Not 10 minutes. It's not a race. It's not where nobody's keeping a tally of how many people you won to Christ. How are we being present with people that want to take that next step to Jesus? Every day we probably run into people that don't know Jesus. Every day we have the opportunity to see where the Spirit of God is working in somebody's life and maybe give a word to them, speak hope to them, maybe just love them and be there with them. If we don't know anybody that doesn't know Jesus, then we have some work to do. It doesn't mean you need to go way out of your way, but in the normal rhythm and routine of your life, where you go, maybe you go to Tim Hortons for a coffee every day and you sit there. Do you know the people that served you? Do you know their name, who they are, what's going on in their life? That's what it means to be present, to connect with people on a deeper level over a long period of time and to get to know them. And sometimes those places are harder to find than we think it are. And sometimes we'll have to go place to place to figure it out. And maybe the Spirit is really not active in a certain location and we need to move on. Or it's not a right fit for us. Where do you go that you can connect with somebody that doesn't know Jesus? Coffee shop, volleyball court, gym, restaurant, salon, you name it, it's there. And for the most part, we probably have some routine in those areas of our life where we could get to know somebody. And as we get to know somebody and as we build trust with them and as we're guests in their place, humbly waiting for the Spirit of God to move in their life, then we can invite others to come and share in that space. Jesus sent out all the disciples 2 by 2. And there's no greater witness than 2 or 3 people sitting together sharing about how God is working in their life. How you're caring for one another, how you're supporting one another, how you're praying for one another. and to be present in that space with more people. I think it really comes down to this, that we need to be more intentional. Not investigative. We need to be sensitive and caring and vulnerable and humble and allow time to build relationships. So think about your life, your comings and goings, the things that you do. Now, maybe it's the people that are coming into your place. Maybe you don't go out that often, but you have people that come into your house to clean it, to help you, to assist you. How are you being a witness to Jesus? How are you being present with those people as they come into your place? Our goal is to be present and allow the Spirit of God to move. And He has invited us to come and be a part of that. So during this week, find your place. Find a person. Be ready to listen, to see, to pray into someone's life. Maybe you don't even have a conversation this week. You just figure out your place. The place where you sense God at work in someone's life. And be ready at some point to speak into their life, to share your story, to give them hope.